Welcome back to Browsing Security, our deep dive series from Layer X Security. This is episode 6. It's easy to focus on the big, flashy security threats, right? But what about the risks hiding in plain sight? In the tools we use constantly, think about this statistic for a second. 99% of enterprise users have at least one browser extension. That's basically everyone.
Almost universal.
And over half, more than 50%, have more than 10 installed. That's not just a convenience. That's potentially a huge kind of hidden attack surface inside your company.
That's exactly the issue we tackle in the Enterprise Browser Extension Security Report 2025. And the key thing here is that this isn't theoretical. We've actually combined the public data from, the extension stores with real-world usage data pulled directly from enterprises using the Layer X security platform.
Right.
So it gives us this unique view of how extensions are really being used and the actual risks they pose in environments like yours.
Precisely. And for you, our listeners, the information security pros tuning in, our goal today is, to cut through the noise. We want to give you a clear data-backed picture of the real risks from browser extensions in your own workplaces. We're focusing on what our data shows needs attention, like right now.
Yeah, and it's really important to understand where these insights come from. The data we're discussing, it's directly from the telemetry we collect via the Layer X solution. Basically, telemetry here means the data we gather continuously on browser and extension activity within organizations. Because our solution sits right in the user's browser, we get, full visibility, every extension, every permission, specifically in those corporate settings.
Okay.
It's that unique viewpoint that lets us share these specific findings.
So these extensions are everywhere, 99%. That's still kind of shocking to hear out loud. But the fact that 52% of employees have over 10, that really shows how integrated they are into just, daily work. This isn't some minor thing.
No, not at all. And it gets more complicated because our research found that 53%, over half of enterprise users, have installed extensions we classify as having high or even critical risk scope.
Okay, high or critical risk scope. What does that mean in practical terms? Like, what can they actually do?
Well, it means they have permissions to access really sensitive stuff. Think cookies, those little session tokens that keep you logged in. Also, passwords, the actual content of the web pages you're looking at, even your browsing history. It's pretty extensive access.
Wow. Okay, so that sounds like basically handing over the keys to a lot of potentially very sensitive company and personal data.
That's the crux of it. The implication is pretty stark, really. A single compromised extension on just one person's machine. That could easily escalate. It could become a much wider breach across the organization. If an extension grabs session cookies, for example, that can lead straight to credential theft, unauthorized system access.
Right, the kind of stuff that keeps security teams up at night. Data leaks, stolen credentials.
Exactly. It hits right at those core concerns.
Okay, so huge numbers of extensions, often with really deep access. But what about the people or companies making these things, the publishers? Feels like another potential issue there.
Oh, absolutely. And our research turned up something quite, unsettling. 54% of extension publishers. They're only identified by a free webmail address, like Gmail.
For half, just a Gmail account.
Yeah, think about that. The barrier to entry for publishing an extension is incredibly low. Almost anyone, anywhere can just anonymously upload something to a store, often with very little vetting.
So what does that actually mean for security? We're potentially giving all that access we just talked about to entities we know almost nothing about. Is that fair?
That's exactly the concern. And it doesn't get much better when you look at their track record or transparency. We found 79%, nearly 4 out of 5, have only ever published one single extension.
One and done.
Right. And 58%, almost 60%, don't even have a privacy policy linked. Plus, about 22% are pretty new, less than 6 months old.
So no history to look at.
Exactly. All these factors together just highlight how incredibly difficult it is to actually trust or verify the legitimacy of a huge chunk of the extensions out there.
Okay, wow. So volume, permissions, and very opaque publishers. Let's dig deeper into some specific findings from the report now. You mentioned the threat surface is maybe wider than just the official stores.
Yes, that's right. While the official Chrome Web Store, Edge add-on store, etc. are the main sources, our data shows 17% of extensions in enterprises actually come from non-official stores, and another 26% are side-loaded.
Side-loaded? You mean installed directly outside of any store, like by another application?
Exactly. Maybe bundled with other software, installed through some other mechanism. And that's a big deal because it completely bypasses any security checks the official stores might have, even limited ones.
Ah, okay.
It dramatically increases the risk of malware or compromised extensions getting in. It's like leaving a side door unlocked.
Makes sense. If it's not coming through the front door, you have to wonder why.
Mm.
And you also found something about permissions being higher in corporate environments specifically.
Yes, another really critical point. We compared the permission requests of extensions typically found in enterprises versus the overall average across all extensions. The differences were, well, noticeable.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Sure. So take cookie access. Across all extensions, about 4.8% ask for it, but in the enterprise installs we analyzed, it jumps to 11%.
More than double.
Yeah. And access to user identity data, that's over 7.5% in enterprise environments compared to just 3.5% overall.
Yeah.
It strongly suggests that enterprise users, just by the nature of the extensions they tend to install, maybe for productivity or specific work tasks, face a higher average risk.
So the tools we're using for work might actually be inherently riskier, permission-wise, than the average extension someone might install at home. Yeah, that's sobering. And then there's the whole Gen AI explosion. That's got to be impacting this too, right?
Oh, definitely. Gen AI extensions are a really interesting and potentially risky new category. Our data shows over 20% of enterprise users already have at least one Gen AI extension installed.
1 in 5 users.
And of those users, nearly half, 45%, have more than one.
Okay.
But what's really striking is their permission level. On average, they ask for sensitive data access, things like identities, cookies, scripting, controlling browser tabs at roughly twice the rate of other extensions.
And it's the rate. Wow.
And specifically, 58% of these Gen AI extensions fall into those high or critical permission categories we talked about earlier. That's even higher than the 53% average across all enterprise extensions.
I guess that makes sense in a way. To do their job, they need deep integration, deep access. But you call them a potential side door for AI use. What did you mean by that?
Right. So many companies are working hard to set up rules and controls for using generative AI tools, maybe blocking certain sites or monitoring network traffic. But these browser-based Gen AI extensions, they can often just bypass all of that. They run right there in the browser.
I see.
They could potentially access and send sensitive company data off to the AI model without ever hitting those network-level security checkpoints you put in place. It creates a potential blind spot in your AI governance.
That's a really crucial point. It's not just the extension security, but how it interacts with or bypasses other security layers. You also stress that permissions are one thing, but publisher trustworthiness is maybe even more critical.
Absolutely. Knowing what an extension can do is vital, yes. But knowing who you're trusting with those permissions is just as, if not more, important. Remember that 89% of extensions have fewer than 1,000 users.
Yeah, tiny user bases for most.
Combine that with, the 54% using free webmail, the 79% who only publish one single extension. It makes it incredibly hard to build any real trust or verify who they are.
Right.
Who are these developers? What are their long-term plans? Are they even still maintaining it? Relying just on what the extension claims to do seems pretty risky given that context.
And that brings us to the last big risk area. You highlighted unmaintained extensions. Sounds like old software problems, but in the browser.
Exactly. And it's a big problem. Our data shows over half, 51% of all extensions haven't been updated in over a year.
More than half haven't been touched in 12 months?
Correct. In software terms, that's practically ancient history. These outdated extensions are likely full of unpatched security holes just waiting to be exploited. Plus, there's the supply chain risk. If a developer just walks away, someone else could potentially take over the extension, maybe inject something malicious later on.
And you found an overlap there too, right?
Yeah, this was particularly concerning. 25%, 1/4 of extensions haven't been updated in over a year, and they come from publishers using those free Gmail accounts.
Okay, that paints a picture. Potentially abandoned projects with no clear ownership. Yikes.
It strongly suggests these could just be ticking time bombs, really.
Yes.
Abandoned code waiting for someone to find a flaw or take it over.
This is, well, it's a really comprehensive and frankly quite worrying picture of the browser extension risks in companies. Based on all this real-world data Layer X has gathered, what's your take? How should organizations approach this?
Well, our perspective, which we detail in the report, really boils down to needing comprehensive visibility and proactive control. You can't secure what you can't see. So step one is a full audit, discovering every single extension across every browser in the organization. Layer X provides that complete discovery.
Getting that inventory.
Exactly. Then You need risk classification. We look at it holistically, internal factors like the permissions it asks for, and external ones like publisher reputation, update history, user count, things like that. We combine these into a risk score.
Okay, so you can prioritize.
Right. It helps security teams focus on the biggest threats. And finally, it's about adaptive enforcement. Not just blocking things, but having the ability to automatically alert or prevent installs or disable risky extensions as their risk profile changes. And crucially, doing this in a way that doesn't constantly interrupt users or break their workflows. We aim for, zero user friction.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the main points are that extensions are everywhere in businesses. They often have really high permissions, and figuring out who actually made them and if they're trustworthy is, well, often really hard. Plus, these new GAI extensions bring extra risks, and tons of extensions are just out of date and potentially vulnerable.
That sums it up pretty well. And the core message for security practitioners listening is, based on this real-world data, you really need to get visibility and control over browser extensions. Given the potential damaged data breaches, credential theft, ignoring this part of your security landscape just isn't really an option anymore.
Absolutely. And if you want to get into all the details, see the specific numbers and analyses, we definitely encourage you to read the full Enterprise Browser Extension Security Report 2025 from Layer X Security. We put a direct link to the full report right there in the description section for you.
And of course, you can always visit the Layer X Security website. That's www.layerxsecurity.com to learn more about our approach and how we help organizations tackle this specific challenge.
So the final thought to leave you with today. Take a moment and really consider the scale of your organization's browser extension footprint. Do you know what's actually running in your users' browsers? And maybe more importantly, after hearing this, are you confident your current security measures are truly up to the task of managing that risk effectively? Something to think about.